Hey, we are here at Smooches and Stabs.
We
It's
are.
it's Pepper Basham and Jaime Jo Wright coming to you right after Christmas with
Yes, even though the recording probably won't come out till who knows, February.
when I decide to hit upload, will probably be about August, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I had more faith in you than you had in yourself there. What's going
I
on?
have no faith in myself anymore, but that's another podcast for another time. Oh my gosh, so much fun. Well, I'm just glad that we're back doing Smooches and Stabs for our, 1.5 listeners that have subscribed to our channel.
I feel sorry for the 0.5 person. You are
Yeah,
more than you feel. I
they're
promise.
slowly on their way out. That's why they get a 0.5. They're those people that are like partway through a book and they're like, man, if this doesn't pick up soon, this book is getting closed and deep fived or deep sixed. Deep sixed? Deep fived.
I don't
Deep
know.
sixed? Ah, now I gotta
Six.
look it up. Deep
Okay.
six?
You
I think it's
know,
deep six.
I think there are people who are looking forward to hearing more smooches and stabs because I've had comments coming in saying, "Oh, you guys are going to start back. That's great." So
Good.
we are going to be hopeful that that's a more consistent thing if we can do it.
So we could be up from 1.5 to 2.
Or 2.5. Let's keep the point 0.5 in
5.
there. For some reason, I kind of like that.
The 0.5 is kind of fun.
At least she didn't say 0.25 because that's like just
Someday
ahead.
someday when I die and you come to my funeral and I'm laying there in my casket, just put a sign in my hands that says I'm the 0.5.
I don't think Nate will let me do that.
I think he totally would. And then
He
play
would
Pop
be,
Goes the Weasel during the funeral.
you know what? That would be super fun.
Oh, I
Yeah.
want to have such a fun funeral that like I don't want to miss it.
Okay, so speaking of Pop Goes the Weasel and funerals, got a story for you.
Okay.
This is not part of what we're talking about today, but it's a
No,
real
it's
life
not.
story. No. So I have several working in a funeral home stories from my grandmother. And so we're
Okay.
talking, she had stories from her grandmother. So we're talking the early 1900s or late 1800s. Now, lots of times there was no embalming, anything like that.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, there I'll tell one story. Next time I'll tell the other story. We'll start with this one.
And then your grandma and I need to become best friends.
Oh, maybe in heaven.
We can
She's
manage
already
that.
there. You guys can talk.
Gosh.
But
Shucks.
anyway, all my grandparents. But anyway, she told a story of from her grandmother. Her grandmother's friend used to work in a funeral home around the turn of the century, late 1800s. And again, this is like small town, mountain town, so that kind of
Mm-hmm.
a community. And the man was kind of like he kind of cleaned up in the funeral home. He's the one who helped straighten things up, helped move stuff, things like that. He
Right.
didn't do a lot of the work with the bodies, but he was often asked to keep watch at night in the places where the
Oh,
bodies were kept because
epic.
yeah, didn't want anybody messing with, didn't want animals getting in, anything like that, sort
Mm-hmm.
of thing. So one night he was keeping watch, and speaking of Pop Goes the Weasel, he was keeping watch, and the coffin. There were like three coffins, and they were open because they're going to be buried the next day.
Right.
And he's sitting there, either reading a book or working on some cleaning or something like that, and turns around, and all of a sudden, a body pops up to a sitting position in one of the coffins.
How?
Happened? What had happened? It was a guy with a hunchback, and they had pinned him down so that he would stay. And the pins had come loose. He had popped up to the sitting position. And once the cleaning guy realized that the guy was still dead, but he wasn't being haunted, he was able to tell the story afterwards. But in that time period, unfortunately, there were lots of live burials because
Yeah.
people who were in
Yeah.
comas or something like that, because you didn't do
Right.
you didn't embalm. there was that chance that would happen. And Granny had stories of that happening too, of people sitting up during the wake and being like, oh my goodness, you were going to bury me. And so, yeah, but that one was actually a comical one because it was like trying to pin him down with the
I have so many stories now. I'm going to dedicate an entire book to you, and then you're just going to feed me these stories.
It seemed to fit the Pop Goes the Weasel funeral idea.
It totally fits. That's like totally what I was getting at, but better. Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us for this episode of Switches and Stabs.
Now to the real story.
Now to the real story, which we have one today, which I think you're introducing today's story. So let's dig in.
This story is much more along the lines of a Jaime Jo Wright book than a Pepper Basham book, just so you know, even though Jaime Jo keeps rubbing off on me with the mystery idea.
I'm liking it.
And I don't quite go all the way over into creepy. So I don't want to go over to creepy, but I like the idea of like cozy mystery / teensy tiny tiptoe into suspense. So this though is pretty interesting, and it came out as a movie in 2018, called The Vanishing. But the real story is actually pretty interesting and leaves lots of room for possibilities, right, Jamie?
Yeah, and disclaimer here, I watched the movie The Vanishing in preparation for this podcast. So I'll be throwing in little movie like tidbits as we go, but I really hope the story is more interesting than the movie was.
Well, the story has no answer, so that's what's cool. Here we go.
Okay.
On December 15th, a ship was going by the Flannan Islands. The Flannan Islands are in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. So they're a little bit further off of the mainland. And so they're more remote. Okay. So a ship was going toward from Philadelphia to Leith and passes by the Flannan Isles. And the Flannan Isles has a lighthouse on it. And on December 15th, this ship passes by the island, notices the light's not working. And they're like, oh, that's odd. The light's not working. If there's a storm, the ships won't know. So the ship gets to Leith 3 days later and informs the lighthouse board that it seems like the light is out at the Flannan Isle Lighthouse. Well, because of a storm that had been passing through, it took a little while for them to send a relief boat to the Flannan Islands to find out what was going on. So on December 26th, the boat finally arrives. And Boxing Day, actually, which was yesterday, the boat finally arrives, and Jim Harvey is the ship's captain, and the boat arrives with a relief lighthouse keeper to allow one of the remaining 3 lighthouse keepers that were supposedly on Flannan Islands keeping watch of the lighthouse. They brought a lighthouse relief guy whose name was Joseph Moore. So the ship leaves Joseph Moore, sends Joseph Moore out in a little boat and says, go check what's going on. The captain does a foghorn to let the lighthouse keepers know that he's there. Nobody comes down to find them to see if they're, the lighthouse keepers usually come to greet a ship that's come in. Nobody comes. So in goes Joseph Moore, the relief guy. And when he gets up to the lighthouse, nobody is there. Reportedly, he sees the door closed but not locked. A half-eaten meal on the table, an overturned chair, and the clocks are stopped. But all 3 of the lighthouse keepers are gone completely. So a few days later, an investigation takes place on the island. They find out that there's lots of wreckage on the west side of the island, like from a storm hit. Okay. Loose ropes and all these sorts of things, like as if a storm had hit that side of the island. But the last visible sign was the 15th that the lighthouse light was not working, and there had been no storms before that time, right around the 15th, reported anywhere. But evidently the light wasn't working on the 15th, so they're assuming that maybe something happened right around then. They just don't know when the storm happened. So there's evidence of a storm. There's evidence of one lighthouse keeper's outside jacket still inside the lighthouse, but the other 2 jackets are gone.
Hmm.
No bodies are ever found. And there you go.
All right.
There has been no definite results. What happened to these 3 lighthouse keepers? The most likely suggested reason is that a storm came up suddenly. The two of the lighthouse guys went out to salvage some of their weaponry.
Right.
I mean weaponry. Some of their equipment. Sorry, some of their equipment. They went out to make sure it was secured. Were swept away, and the 3rd lighthouse keeper, because you're never supposed to leave that lighthouse unmanned.
No.
Right. So the
No.
3rd one was not supposed to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But they're thinking that he saw that a wave may have been coming, and he went out to warn the other 2 lighthouse keepers, and they were all swept away. That is the conclusion that the investigation came up with at the end of December, beginning of January.
Okay.
Now, there's lots of possibility of things. Now, here's the cool thing. Okay, some cool things about this island. This island is called St. Finnan's Island. And there's an old church, 7th century church that was built by St. Finnan. And no one ever lives on this island. Only sheep and the lighthouse keepers.
Sounds like a great place.
Right. It's uninhabited. Now, here are locals. Locals say they do not spend the night there ever because you can hear voices on the wind. And they don't know what that means. Now, we are in Scotland for this. So that means you've got lore, you've got superstition, you've got all the fairies and all the boca and all the fun stuff that go along with Scotland. So I'm having a little bit of a blast with imagination right now.
Little bit. Yeah.
So what happened? Now, here's some very good fun story ideas of what could have happened.
Okay.
In my mind, if I'm going to leave out the fantasy part of it, which I would prefer the fantasy part, but if I'm going to leave out the fantasy part, I would think that one of the guys was known for having a hot temper. I think his MacArthur was one of the lighthouse keepers' names. He was known for having a hot temper. And another one, I think Marshall was already, and he had already lost some of his equipment in a previous lighthouse opportunity, and he had to pay £5, which at that time was super big money in 1900. So he was afraid of losing some of his equipment. So we had some high anxiety going on. Okay. Just among the 3 guys, possibly, right? They're all seasoned lighthouse guys. They're all seasoned. So they should have known how to handle a storm. They should have known how to handle normal atmospheric things that could have happened. So here's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if there was a fight that broke out that caused one of them to fall, then the other 2 attacked each other because one killed the other, and then the 3rd one maybe did take a boat off and leave, never to return because he knew he'd go to jail for what happened to the other 2. And my guess would be like 2 of them are family men. One of them was a single guy. Right. And so what if, he's regretful because he just made widows of this family man, right? Made a widow of this family man. So that would be a possibility. Pirates is a possibility, which I kind of like because it adds a lot of adventure and suspense. Were they killed by pirates? Were they captured by pirates? Right. Is there kind of like the movie you watch? You can go into detail about that. Was there some sort of treasure found on the island? Right. That may have never been found before. And these guys were like, oh, let's go off and start a new life.
New life, right. Well, and really the movie kind of does a mishmash of everything that you just said, because it talks about the gold being found, and MacArthur is pretty much going into almost a semi-psychotic breakdown. And he ends up killing one of them, and then the 2 remaining ones leave the island only to have another one die. I'm spoiler alerting this because this movie is not worth your time.
Yeah, right.
It's like the epic concept for a really amazing film, and it's beyond predictable. And it's just, unless you want to see a lot of men fighting and throwing bloody
Right.
things at the screen, that's about all it is.
It was disappointing.
It was disappointing.
Well,
It was, because there's so much more you could do with this story.
right. And the question, I do have questions, like if it was a pirate attack or something like that, two things I have questions about. Number one, why the leftover jacket whenever a seasoned seaman would not have left the lighthouse in December without his
No.
oil skins? Number two,
Right.
why stop the clocks?
Well,
The stopped
unless,
clocks are the
see,
thing.
you could make this funny, like the dark humor. You could
Oh,
have had
oh,
three lighthouse keepers, one of which has a mentality sort of like I do, where when he realizes they're all going to perish, he's like, let's make it look like something really creepy so that 150 years from now, people are still talking about what happened to us.
Pepper
But
and
what's the
Jamie will have
first
a
thing you do?
podcast.
You stop the clocks. Always stop the clocks. Always. Because then it makes people question, why did the clock stop?
Mm-hmm.
Dun, 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 dun. It is weird. Do they say that the clocks all were stopped at the same time?
I wasn't able to find that. I did actually look for that, and I couldn't find if they had stopped, because usually, you know this as well as I from your research, when someone died in the late 1800s, early 1900s, you stop the clocks in the
Right.
house on the time at the time they died. So the question might be, if one of the lighthouse keepers died, and it was an accident, and he died by accident, right? Then they've stopped the clocks. But what happened to the other two? And number two, why would there be a half-eaten meal? I can understand, like, let's say the third lighthouse guy saw a big wave coming, and he was eating, saw the big wave coming, ran out to warn maybe the other lighthouse guy, and was swept away too. But he ran out, jumped up from the chair. The chair falls backward. Half the food is eaten, runs out to warn him without putting his oil skins on, and he's swept away along with the second one who hadn't died yet. So
it's plausible.
But there's so many things that have to happen to make that happen.
Well,
I love the idea of the island already having an aura of supernatural weirdness, which would work out well for selkies or mermaids.
It never fails, Pepper. It never fails. You have to romanticize it, don't you?
Well, the selkie idea is really fun for romantic.
I mean, you said like the supernatural and stuff, and my brain's going to like old lighthouse keepers that have died in the past and pirates, and the ghosts are coming up to consume the ones that have, taken up the post. And it's, this deep, dark vortex of evil. And you're going, ooh, silkies and mermaids.
Well, and a lot of people did think of the ghost ship as an idea of what happened to them, or as pirates as an idea of what really happened to them, or a giant sea serpent happened. Because we are, again, off the coast of Scotland. Anything is possible.
It was probably the Loch Ness monster on his way to the lake that he now lives in or something.
Very possible. Very possible. I don't know. Does Loch Ness pour out into the sea? Who cares?
No, I'm sure it doesn't. But this is storytelling, Pepper. Anything can happen. He grew wings and flew.
Exactly.
He flew in the spirits of the dead lighthouse keepers.
There you go. Of the past, of the dead lighthouse keepers of the past. Or, the fact that it's, so people would say about this island, which I just think is still fascinating. Having been to Scotland, one of the islands we visited, which is not uninhabited, but it's the Isle of Iona, which is a very holy kind of island that they see over there. One of the first place Christianity came in, one of the sacred places Christianity came into Scotland, they say.
Okay.
And when you do step on that shore, there's this sense of, I don't know, it's just a very interesting, old, ancient place feeling.
Okay.
And so it is curious that these old ancient places carry with them sometimes age. You feel the age. Not that I'm believing in ghosts or anything, but I'm saying if we were going to just have fun with this,
Right.
right? If we were going to have
Right.
fun with this, what did happen? Could the mystery of Scottish war play into either ghosts from previous lighthouse keepers, ghosts who maybe old saints ghosts who bring down men who are not doing the right thing. Maybe the guy did lose his temper and kill one or both the other lighthouse keepers, and then the ghost took over and took him down as judgment. Or I still
Well,
I
yeah.
like the Selkie. I like the Selkie idea because I can totally romanticize Selkie ideas. If you can't see her, she's got this incredulous look on her face right now.
No, I was just as I laugh, I have bad cold, so if you hear me like grunge laughing, that's why. You could, I mean, if you wanted to go with that, you could say there was like a mermaid that they found on the shore. One of the lighthouse keepers fell in love with her and he had to murder the other two in order to keep her safe.
Or he went into mermaids are not known to be nice.
No,
They're
they're
known to be
not. But see,
tricky.
I was trying to
You were trying.
contribute.
I see that. But she could have caused him to go into a jealous frenzy because they were known to be very magical and not nice. Selkies, same thing could happen with a Selkie.
So she was the cause of his psychological collapse.
Yes, his break. And so he went and then killed the guys and out of jealousy. And then it was so so mournful over what he did. He went inside and stopped the clocks, had a final meal, and joined her in the ocean for
making
all
sure
eternity.
he kicked the chair over before he left the house.
Maybe she, yes.
What?
Maybe she
what would have been her motivation though?
I don't know. She probably ate him when she got him down there anyway.
Oh, food. Yeah, it's always the motivator.
Food is a big motivator for me.
Food's the motivator. Why'd you kill him? I was hungry. What made you do that? I was hungry.
Well, all these
Why did you go
are,
on a killing spree? I was hangry.
all these guys are Scottish, so they're going to have some belief in Scottish lore too. Makes you just wonder what happened.
It's true.
What do you think? Are you with the ghost pirate still?
Well, I like the ghost pirate idea. On the flip side, there's the part of my writing side that's like, it's such a trope that I don't know if I can stick with the pirate concept. Like, you get a lighthouse, you kind of expect to have pirates. So, I like, me and my twisty brain. I kind of still am liking the concept of one of the guy having a mental breakdown, because that does definitely lend itself toward some explanation of the creep effect around the lighthouse.
Yes. That the whatever is going on this island impacted him in such a way that he went crazy.
Right. But if I were to write this into a book and I was to have no limitations, there's just no limitations in what I can write, I would probably say the reason for his psychological breakdown was because the lighthouse was alive.
Yes, of course you was.
And so the lighthouse itself feels very proprietary of the island. And that's why they've had a bad string of luck at this lighthouse over the decades and the centuries. It's like something does not want them there, and they're always attributing it to ghosts or something, but no, it's the spirit of the sea that is infused into the bricks and mortar of the lighthouse. And if it's not going to claim your very breath, it will claim your mind.
Ooh. And maybe only the one who's most closest to going volatile, because MacArthur or whoever it was, which was the most volatile, right, he might have been the most susceptible to the influence of the sea and the island. Okay,
100%. So, I mean, we know that if you and I get thrown into this lighthouse, who's the first one to go mentally? It's me. I mean,
you're gonna kill me.
I'm the problem. It's me.
You will kill me. I feel so much more love for you right now.
Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
Right. make that.
Hey, those would be some good TikToks. Like pictures of dead, like dead things. Hi. Oh, yeah, that gets
Okay.
okay.
A very non-fantastical thought here. So the relief lighthouse keeper's name was Joseph Moore. We don't know anything really about the background of these lighthouse
Wasn't that the
keepers
name of the
all.
guy who founded the Mormons?
I think it's Joseph Smith that did
Oh,
that.
well, you know, same difference. Joseph Moore, Joseph Smith. Okay, moving on. Back to your hypothesis.
So Joseph Moore was the lighthouse keeper who came as a relief to St. Finnan's Island for these
Okay.
to find out what was going on, right?
Right. Whatever happened to him? Okay, keep talking.
We don't know, but interestingly, what if he was already in league with one of the lighthouse guys who were already on the island? Okay. Maybe they already knew of some kind of treasure that was there. And so what he did was he went into the lighthouse. The one lighthouse keeper had already killed the other two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Moore's the only one who saw the first everything. He was left alone to go up to the lighthouse by himself first to find out what had happened. You get this from all these mystery stories where sometimes the murderer is the one who comes in, first and leaves all the clues that you're supposed to have.
Oh, right.
So if he went in, maybe got rid of the final lighthouse keeper so he could keep everything himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Turned over the chair, stopped the clocks, all this sort of thing, and then came back down and said, "Oh my goodness, look what nobody's there." Not fantastical, but an interesting idea.
It could be. Maybe this was all part of his master plan. I found his letter. I just found his letter.
Ooh.
That he wrote. Joseph Moore wrote.
Yes.
After he went and investigated.
What did he say?
Well, it's a long letter, so I won't read the whole thing.
By the way, the island is very small and it's a pretty location.
Oh, I'm moving. I'm so moving there. Okay. I went up. I was the first to land. I can't read this with a Scottish accent. I was the first to land, leaving Mr. McCormick and his men in the boat till I should return from the lighthouse. I went up, came to the entrance gate. I found it closed. Oh, I can hear the eerie music.
Yeah, the gates closed and the doors closed. So if somebody was leaving in a hurry, would they have done that?
I made for the entrance door leading to the kitchen and storeroom, found it also closed, and the door inside that, but the kitchen door itself was open. On entering the kitchen, I saw that the fire was not lighted for some days. The beds were empty, just as they had left them in the early morning. I didn't take time to search further. I knew something serious had occurred. And then he goes on. He goes, the lamp was cleaned, the fountain full, blinds on the windows, etc. And then I was ordered back to the island. So he went back a second time, went ashore, traversed the island from end to end, but nothing was seen to convince us what happened. The crane itself, which is a part of the hoisting things from ships from down below and unhoisting them up. We had an old box halfway up the railing for holding West Landing mooring ropes and tackles, and it is gone. Some of the ropes, it appears, got washed out of it. They lay strewn on the rocks near the crane. The crane,
like a storm had happened, safe. Or something had attacked it.
Yes.
Sea creatures.
There's nothing to give us an indication that that it was there. Oh, that the hand railing was there when the poor men lost their lives. Only that Mr. Marshall has his sea boots on and oilskins. Also, Mr. Ducat has his sea boots on. He had no oilskin, only an old waterproof coat. And Donald MacArthur was wearing his coat left behind him. Has his wearing coat left behind him. They wrote weird letters, like their English is really weird.
So MacArthur didn't take his coat. So
MacArthur was the one that went out in shirt sleeves.
Right. And it's assumed that he was the one who was at the table when he went out to warn the other two of whatever he was going to warn them of.
And he's also one that they consider to be very volatile.
Right.
So, who knows? Who knows what happens? I do kind of like the idea, though, that Joseph Moore is not 100% innocent. Because no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but there's been no accounts of anything creepy happening again.
Well, that's because he's a mastermind.
That's right. Well, if he was the mastermind and it wasn't something supernaturally crazy, then it could only just happen once and not be a part of the whole spooky.
Yeah. I mean, looking over these historical letters that I've run across, I mean, I'm skimming them. They all seem pretty sure that there was an accident, kind of like you described. And, that all happened.
But they can't prove it. There's no way to prove it. The other thing that's really neat about the island, besides just the idea that I love the whole Scottish lore behind it being and what is this island? What is happening on this island? All this sort of stuff, I love that it continues to be an unanswered question all these years later, over 100 years later. Here's a really neat little sentence. It says, implausible stories ensued after the first investigation didn't come up with definite answers. I mean, nobody could definitely say because there were never any bodies found.
No.
And the clocks being stopped, the clocks being stopped really messed with people. Right?
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah. And so it says implausible stories ensued, such as that a sea serpent had carried them in a way, that they had been arranged for a ship to take them away and start new lives, which two of the guys were fathers of multiple children.
Right.
That they had been abducted by foreign spies, or that they had met their fate through the malevolent presence of a boat filled with ghosts. The baleful influence of the Phantom of the Seven Hunters was widely suspected locally.
Well, now you throw that out there. The Phantom of the Seven Hunters? That sounds like the book Phantom of the Seven
I know it says this, yes.
Ooh. That's a whole other story. Oh my goodness.
Well, so we have to do that one for another time.
Tune in for part 2 next week on Smooches and Stabs.
Right. I would love to hear what you guys think as listeners.
Sorry.
Are you all for this Seven Hunters thing? You're all about it?
No, I just stumbled on this is another solution. A ship arrived and took the 3 lighthouses to a new life of heavy drinking and wild women. And there you have it, folks.
That's
the mystery of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse has been solved. It's nothing subversive, nothing malicious. They just got sick of the island and they left for heavy drinking and wild women.
They got sick of the island life and they got sick of married life, clearly. And were taken away they chose to go with this ship. So funny thing, I really want to know what the listeners think. What kind of conclusion do you want to draw from all these different clues? Also, if Jamie or I were going to write a story based on this historical event, which direction should we go? Right?
How would you that's a good question.
Yeah. How would you add romance that isn't Selkie or mermaid?
Must you add romance?
No. You always must add romance. Romance is always involved. Jamie, how can you not? It's already suspenseful. It's giving you ball down the plate for suspense here.
Right. Which means you don't want to dial it back. You just want to keep amping it up.
No, but maybe Joseph Moore and one of the other lighthouse keeper guys were fighting over the same lady.
Oh, how did you not figure out this thread? Pepper, one of the lighthouse, the one that was, because there's 3 lighthouse men.
Uh-huh.
One was volatile. One was in charge of the lighthouse. The other
Mhm.
was known for being very quiet. What if the quiet one was not a man?
Right.
Love triangle.
Ooh.
Bada bing. Chalk
Ooh,
one
and
up for Jaime Jo. Pepper, you can
she
go
and her
write that
creepy love
romance,
triangle.
mushy stuff.
That
And
poor
then I'll
woman
kill them
stuck
all
on
at
an
the end.
island with those two men.
Who would you fall in love with?
Hey,
The
she's the one who
psychotic killer?
She killed both the guys and went off with the gold. That's what happened.
Oh, and that's the end of Smooches and Snaps today, folks. Best ending ever.
Boom. Start a
Boom.
new life.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
We're so feminist. We can't even act feminist on a podcast.
I know. We're so not. I was looking for the names again, and I was trying to see how we could shorten one to be a girl's name. I'm like,
yeah,
like James, Thomas, and Donald.
Oh,
Thomas Cena.
was that John Cena's like predecessor?
Yeah. All right, guys.
Oh, this
your
is
answers. Good. Give us your answers, and we will see you next time
on Smooches and
Snaps.